Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, Untitled Backups. Untitled Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with Untitled Backups at Untitled.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, Untitled Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with Untitled Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at ontoair.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
Welcome into episode 8 of season 22, last episode of the season. Good to have you back. Got myself, Alli, and Camille here with us, and we're joined by Kurt. Tell us your last name. How do you pronounce it?
Schnakenberg.
Schnakenberg. Very cool last name. Awesome. Good to have you with us. We'll learn more about Kurt and his story later on in the show. So I'll walk us through what we're going to be talking about today. We'll start with our round the bases, everything new and updates going on in the Airtable world and all the communities. Keep you up to date and fresh. Then we'll spotlight Untitled, our primary sponsor. Then we will learn about Kurt and his story and background and how he came into this world of Airtable. And then Kurt's going to walk us through a base that he's built and functionality for a customized ERP solution. And then just a quick shout out on how to join our community if you're not already a part of it. And then finally, Camille's going to walk us through finally the new feature of same table backlinks, which we'll talk about here. So with that, around the bases, first I'll start at the top with Howie. So we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Howie started a new podcast. Howie is the CEO of Airtable and started a new podcast called Builders and Breakthroughs. Has a new episode out speaking with a VP at Walmart and talking about how Walmart uses Airtable and AI to transform their business. So new episode if you want to get into the mind of Howie and people that he's talking to. Check that out. Okay, on the what's new, there was nothing new. So they didn't announce anything new, but the community at BuiltOnAir is on top of it. And I think Rob was first credited. Ben was the one that posted it on his behalf. But reciprocal linking, which we're going to showcase later in the show, is finally out. So this is kind of a bombshell, kind of a big deal. So we won't spoil the lead. Camille's going to walk us through how this works. So you got to stick around for the show, and this is very cool, something we've been waiting for a while. Okay, here's a question. So Luis on LinkedIn is begging Airtable to add this one feature. It's funny, everybody has like their pet feature that they're just dying for Airtable to add. So this one is automatically populating a linked record field, like a default or from a lookup. So being able to do a lookup and then auto-populating. My question is I guess if you have a double layered lookup, you could get a lookup. But if you have a lookup, then it has to be from an existing linked record. So I'm not exactly sure how this would work. He has a screenshot of how he would think it would work. Populate from a lookup, and then I guess you'd specify the lookup field.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it being useful populating from like
formula or like something. I mean, yeah, I would like more, like Coda, for example, does this where you can write a formula and have that formula return like linked records essentially, which is super powerful. And I've found that to be really useful in a lot of cases. So I could see some use for this for sure.
I'm a little confused. I'm sure if I were to be walked through it, like through how a base is set up, I'd get it. I do want to highlight the phrasing of this post is hilarious. At the bottom, it says tagging Airtable with the usual combination of love and despair.
We've all been there before.
And for that alone, I support this request.
Yeah. I will say, I think you can. So they're saying how you currently do it is, you basically have a lookup of a record ID, and then he's saying you need 2 automations. I think you could do it with 1 automation.
You could.
Yeah, that if you're just looking for an update on that field, the lookup field, I think you could do it either way.
I usually just do a formula field that's like, if this record ID does not equal this field, then I need to update, and that just returns a value. And my automation is when this field is not empty. Mm-hmm. And that works for creation and update all the time.
Yeah.
However, it can get stuck. I can get into the weeds there, but sometimes I have a second automation that runs on a cron job that's like every night fixing anything that got stuck. But
there's one of the open source alternatives to Airtable, Table, has their own automation layer, and they have an automation action for on create or update, which Airtable does not have at this present moment in time. They should have one, so people don't have to do hacks and works around like this, but
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, some interesting commentary on there. Next one, also from LinkedIn. So somebody pointed this out. I don't know that I've noticed this. So there's a new tab here. Let me bring up this. So create AI fields. And it brings up kind of this like tutorial and gives you examples of prompts that you could use to create fields, or even this might even be like shortcuts to automatically do it. So if you're looking for inspiration on what types of fields that you could add, what types of AI fields, they're really trying to help make it as easy as possible to add AI into your base. So there's that. Okay, next one. Also a similar feature. This was just on Airtable's main page. We've talked about this in the past, but it's kind of cool. Reminder. One thing I noticed in here watching this video, let me go back. If you just saw that drag right there, that's something, I don't think we've shown it, but I think we've talked about, you can now drag from your File Explorer directly in there and it'll automatically paste all of them. So let me show that again. So it just drags it and it creates one record for each individual item, which is sometimes what you want. Sometimes you want to drag it right into an attachment field, which I think you can do if you just drag it into a specific attachment field. Mm-hmm. And then anyways, this is showing the AI extracting directly out of the PDFs, the information that you're looking for. So that's a cool feature of AI. I
love that it shows you the source too. Like it actually cites where it got that information from, which makes it so much less black boxy. And I'm really into that. I think that's awesome.
That's nice.
Let's see. Do you have to have a field?
When they click on one of those or expand it, it shows where it came from. Mm-hmm. And then it was, I think, in the middle somewhere.
And I think before this. AI fields, I believe, can search the internet now, so I imagine it would tell you the address if it got it from the web.
It does. It's very cool.
Yeah. It was just right there. It has a drop down for sources right there. Yeah, very cool. That is helpful. Okay, next one. This comes from the BuiltOnAir community. This is one. It's just a reminder. I think this has been around for a while, but Ben Bailey, who's been on the show before, just noticed it, and it's one of those things where it's like, whoa, how long has this been in there? But let's see. How do you explain this? Can you explain this? What he's finding?
Yeah, there's a in the interface. If you have a linked record field and you're trying to display it, I'm guessing this is right. You can display a linked record field as a field or a view. And when you do it as a view, it gives you all the same configuration options as like, a list layout does, or you can change the visualization to calendar, list, Kanban, whatever it might be. This also works with lookup fields of linked records. And it's been that way since I think day one of interfaces. And that's one of my favorite things about the interfaces is that you don't need to have it be a direct linked record to display it as such. One thing it does prevent you from doing, though, is you can't add records through a form, I believe, if it's a lookup field. I believe that's one of the limitations.
Yes, which I find upsetting.
Yes.
But you can make them editable, inline editable, so you can edit specific fields of whatever's displayed on it, but you can't create new records from it, even if the form that you have pop up doesn't require that whatever field is linking those tables together be empty. It just won't let you do it. So you have to find some other means of getting a new record available through that relationship, but it is pretty useful.
Yeah. Is there a limit to how many layers deep the linked record?
Not that I know of.
I haven't hit it, although I don't think I've tried it with more than like 2 degrees of separation between tables, but I don't know what in there would stop it from being able to do it. Your filter conditions might end up being really weird and unhelpful if they're so many tables away, but I guess it depends on your schema.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to test. Interesting. Yeah. So you see here, so it's a lookup field of a linked record is the lookup field. So it's 2 layers deep here. It's being treated. So yeah, that's a cool feature to include. All right, next one. Okay, now we're getting into the AI world. So Joe asked a question of, is Airtable going to, so we've talked about MCP in the past, stands for Model Context Protocol. And it's basically like an AI wrapper around the API. So there are community-based MCP servers for Airtable, but Airtable itself does not have one. So Joe's kind of asking if they're going to provide their own so that people kind of standardize around the one that's managed by Airtable, or just use community ones, or like other companies like Pipedream has written their own that you could use. So interesting conversation there. Bill French chimes in. And so, yeah, if you are into kind of that next wave of usage, that's an interesting conversation going on. We're going to stay with the MCP realm. So OpenAI last week announced a basically embedded MCP support for their chat and their API, and Zapier is like one of their main. So it's interesting. Zapier's really embraced this approach, this agent communication. And so this demo showcases in the chat inside of OpenAI or ChatGPT, you can ask it to actually perform tasks, and it does that through Zapier. And so does that mean, do you have to have that Zap all set up for it to use it, or will it essentially create the Zap on the fly? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I haven't played with anything in this realm yet.
Yeah. So anyway, so anything that you have to at least have the connections to the different tools configured in Zapier for it to use. I don't know if you actually have to set up the Zaps beforehand for it to be used. That'd probably be my guess. I doubt it would I don't know, with agents. So anyway, some cool stuff there.
Super cool.
Okay. More stuff. Also in kind of, if you're getting into this agent realm of automating tools, this tool AuthKit, one of the challenges with Airtable and with a lot of other tools is managing the connection to Airtable. So Airtable uses OAuth, and if you've implemented OAuth before, one of the challenges is keeping your tokens refreshed. You have to continually keep them up to date and pinging, and if you don't, then they'll expire and you got to reconnect, and it's kind of a pain. I've been through that battle. So this AuthKit is kind of making that easier. They'll handle all the refreshing of the tokens, so you don't have to worry about it. So if you're doing agent work, communicating with Airtable is one of the ones that they support on their initial release. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's by this company, Pika OS, which does other stuff. If you're a developer, I started looking at them. Okay. 2 more. Here's a couple of tools, third-party tools that if you want to check out, I always like to highlight new tools that support Airtable. So Martin has released an Airtable to Stripe invoice sync. So if you're using Airtable and Stripe and you want to keep them in sync, you can check them out at PowerSync. And there's one, and then there's one more, Table Proxy. So if you're using the API, so if you're doing a lot of this AI stuff, there are limits to Airtable's API. And so this tool is going to be a proxy that basically caches the data that you're querying so that it's not continually hitting the API. So it allows you to maybe query more quickly or more data, and it'll cache where it can. So that might be helpful to get around the Airtable limitations around their API. So there's a tool to check out. It looks like it's not live yet, but you can follow this thread to stay up to date when that goes live. All right. So yeah, there is definitely one big piece of news. We're going to talk about it later, but very excited for that that we'll get into later in the show. So with that, if you are running your business on Airtable, it's best practice to make sure your data is stored outside of Airtable. And that's where OntoAir comes in. Our backup solution helps you store your data, your schema, your attachment information, all in your existing infrastructure at Box, Dropbox, OneDrive, or Google Drive. So check it out, ontoair.com. You can use promo code BuiltOnAir for a discount and start backing up your data today, that tool. Okay, with that, Kurt Schnakenberg, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm going to put you on the spotlight here. Let's put you up. So tell us a little bit about your story, your history, your background, context, and then how you found Airtable and what you're up to.
Sweet. Yeah, it's all about me now. I get my 5 minutes. Appreciate it. So I historically ran a building materials distribution company that was heavily schedulized product. So think we're in door hardware. So let's say you're building a high-end residence. We had to specify often dozens of items per specific door. And these are not commodity items. They're generally made to order, if not designed and engineered to order as well. So there's this high level of complexity. And we had spent decades working through the various out-of-the-box ERPs. So we were on an Epicor product for a while. We were on Dynamics 365, R2. So we're running on all these products. And we were told one of two things. When we would come in and say, hey, our workflow is unique, the way we do things is different, we were either told, no, it's not. Every business has all these commonalities and our ERP solves all of them, right? And then if they sniffed that maybe they thought we had enough money, they were like, you're right, it is unique, and let's customize this for you solely, right? So we were sitting in this spot where we had no great solution, right? Live with antiquated, unintentional workflows, or sell one of my kidneys to try and finance building out something that actually worked for us. And so we were running on the Dynamics platform. And again, we had sunk a ton into customizing. It wasn't giving us what we were looking for. And I randomly ran into somebody in a community entrepreneurs organization. If you guys have heard of it, like EO is YPO, Vistage, these different groups. So I was actually interviewing a new prospect for the Chicago chapter of EO, and we ended up jamming on Airtable for 2 hours. It totally shifted the interview. All we talked about was Airtable. I'm like, oh shoot, I got to actually figure out about your business. But I was hooked. And then about 60 days later, we had our CRM rebuilt in Airtable. And then over the last roughly 2 years, we've just been adding other functionalities to it.
That's awesome. Very cool.
And I think my wife will eventually leave me because of Airtable.
I can relate to that. I enjoy my whole family talking about it so much.
When I tried running our family on Airtable, I'm like, great, honey, we're going to have meetings and we're going to set our goals and we're going to manage it in Airtable. She gave up.
There can be limits to your Airtable.
Yeah, it's got to end somewhere, right? But I'm a non-tech founder, and I've moved on. I have another business now, but I'm a non-tech person, and this Airtable bridged the gap for me being able to understand it and implement as my team needed, right? Like some of the custom implementations we had tried prior failed, and they kept failing over and over again. And eventually I had to look in the mirror and say, it's us, not the subs that we were hiring to do it. And we realized, well, we didn't even know the right questions to ask. We were just so uneducated that we needed to sort of stumble in the dark for a little bit. And Airtable allowed us to stumble in the dark enough to figure our way out.
Yeah, very cool.
Super exciting.
What have been some of your favorite features or, obstacles that you've been able to overcome?
So for a while, before we were running on two-way sync, that was quite the headache for us. And the biggest obstacle is we've gone back and rebuilt just about everything that we put in place, because at the onset, again, we were stumbling in the dark and it was a disaster. So we realized our architecture was terrible and circled back to almost a complete redo. But the biggest benefit that we love, right, is the adoption from our team, because someone will come and say, hey, I'd like to change this, small aspect, and we change it on the fly. Right, we're not putting together an RFQ to our developer who then comes back to us with a proposal. We negotiate, sign off on it. We have to test it. It's not a month to get these changes in place. It's quick on the fly, and so the adoption level from the team has been much higher than any other software we've implemented prior.
Yeah, very cool.
They're also starting to dig a little more than they should. I think becomes a problem, right? They start realizing what they can do with it and trying to do it themselves at times. So we're working on limiting that.
Yeah. Any wish list items? Anything you wish Airtable would add?
It's a great question. I don't know that I'm deep enough to have a strong answer for that. We've gone in it and we found a lot of the issues for us. I wish there was a means without doing 2 automations to have like a reverse trigger on the automation. So we have a lot of dynamic data that if we trigger an automation, we're then building another automation to undo it if it goes the other direction. And so we played around with views and different approaches to it. But if there was an intrinsic way to have it where it was reciprocal, that would be helpful.
Interesting. Yeah, that could be helpful. Very cool. Well, we're excited to have you share.
And an internal PDF generator beyond Page Designer, and that you know, I highly doubt I'm the only one who's ever mentioned that. But the number of
would you believe you're the first one?
Oh, really?
No.
Oh man, the number of issues we run into between all of our getting old. We use PDF.co, and just the issues of tying stuff over it's probably 3/4 of the bugs we encounter.
Yeah, for sure. That's a common use case, and the limitations of their Page Designer, and yeah, definitely. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna show transition here. So you're gonna walk us through the CRP system that you were talking about.
Yeah.
What you got? Let me put your screen on.
For sure.
Yeah, now we can see it.
All right, so this is the crux of our business functionality. So we, in this section in here, so we create tags. In a specific project, we create a tag. Because this company does door hardware, it's door hardware, but it could be, we'll talk bathrooms or plumbing products because that's probably simpler to understand. So if you have in a house 4 different bathrooms, each one is going to have a set of different products. You're going to have a different toilet, different tub, different faucet, different sink, all these things that go into it. They all have different pricing. They have different preps, meaning that the general contractor, the plumber, needs to prepare for them differently. They have lots of different attributes that tie into them and we have to be able to check to say, do these actually work together? You're going to have different colors, different situations. And so we create tags. We then enter in all the information from floor plans that are relevant to that tag. And then we start assigning it items, right? So this is the tag at the top part. And then down here, we get into all the items. We control the pricing. So different vendors have, they might have a price increase, or with the tariffs we've been seeing recently, our pricing is fluctuating almost daily. And so we need to be able to manage correct pricing with our clients. And so we're able to manage that within here. We can enter in different pricing, our MSRP, our unit price, costs, our gross profit percentage, what we're selling it at. Then we get into lead time, so how long it takes to get. And then we have specs and preps. So these would be PDFs that we have synced into a WordPress website where we can go in and view line drawings or instructions on how to essentially drill and set up for that piece. So one is like line drawings, the other is like essentially installation instructions. We're then able to go through and order them in different subsets. So you might say, I want to order half these items today. So the stuff that goes behind a wall in a bathroom, you need to order long before the stuff that sits on the ground after you've closed up the walls. So you have to stage it by when the product's actually going to be necessary. So we're able to slice and dice these subset up into various groups of items in terms of when we purchase them and when we need them by. So we can communicate that over to our vendors. We then have our purchasing section where once we've approved an order, it's created an invoice. The client has paid that invoice. We then go into purchasing, splits it up by different manufacturer and factory for us to order it from. So we create PO lines, we add it to a PO, and then we send the purchase order off to our vendors, at which point we then track it, get it in, share those dates with the clients. So we have a lot of automations in place where, let's say I had a promise date of June 5th for this item. If it's not going to be until June 10th, we have a trigger that emails the client and lets them know, hey, your product's delayed. And then updates to the new promise date. We can create PDFs from here. So as I was griping about, we have, let's see, I don't have any in here, but we have PDF creation that we can go in and see the various copies of like a proposal to the client themselves and pricing on it. We then roll all this up into what we call our dashboards here. So this is our pipeline. So we look at project, and this is all dummy data that I stripped out in case any one of my competitors hops on and is interested in seeing our numbers. This is all our dashboard looking at project pipeline. We can filter it by salesperson, or outside salesperson, inside salesperson for various geographies. We can look at different dates, and it shows us project values in the pipeline that have yet to be converted. Then we can jump over to what actually has been converted. So we have it split by month, down by quarter, and then we can look at how many actual conversions we had, and we can also filter this by client or branch, and again by inside and outside salesperson, in order to see sort of trends, like our average numbers on it. So it's a lot of dashboard work, lots of dashboards.
Yeah. Very cool.
And that's the crux of our system. That's the crux of what we build.
Awesome. What's been kind of you talked a little bit earlier about the acceptance of this. What's been the impact of having this system for the business?
Sure. So when we were on Microsoft Dynamics, there's 10,000 buttons when you go into a certain area, and you can hide some of them, but it gets a little funky. Our team, as we started rolling this out, we would have weekly meetings where people would share what they wanted, right? And what they didn't like as we were rolling out different functions. And we would prioritize addressing as many of those as we could over just an actual function add or bug that we encountered, because people would come in each week and their feedback was actually listened to and incorporated into what they were using. So we were flying on it. So we used to be at about 21 to 28 days, so like 3 to 4 weeks on system onboarding when we were in AX, just our initial system onboarding in Dynamics. And we've cut that down to like a week, where people are able to fly into it and get much better at it. And obviously it takes longer for people to master anything, but it's been much quicker in terms of people understanding what they're looking at. Mm-hmm. And we're stripping stuff out, right? Less is more. As we go through, we're trying to pull out as much as we possibly can and live super lean.
Yeah, cool. And are you the main one maintaining it, or you've got other people?
I was, and that's when it became that three-headed monster that people had to rebuild. So we went out. We now have a team of 4 developers in-house that work in this all the time.
Okay.
But yeah, it was me, and then mapped it all out in Lucid Chart, handed it over to the team, and said, "Go unscrew up everything that I created a version out of." But the strength of or power of Airtable for us within this was, I understood the business function, right? I had an in-depth understanding of the business need, and whenever we try to go to other software platforms, because I didn't understand enough of the tech that it was being built on, I failed miserably at conveying all that business need over to them. And Airtable sort of bridged that gap for me and has made it much easier to communicate.
That's cool. That's a great advantage. Yeah, huge selling point there. Awesome. And now tell us a little bit about your agency that you run now. It's also in this space.
Oh, yeah. So I have an offshore staffing agency. We left, so the building materials side of the world, I've moved on from that. And now I do offshore staffing teams in the Philippines for building materials companies. And believe it or not, that company's run on Airtable as well. We have a complete workflow in our accounting software. Everything is Airtable there. I'm involved, as I mentioned, in EO, so Entrepreneurs Organization in Chicago, and we run the chapter on an Airtable and workspace there as well.
All right.
It's gotten in my blood.
Yeah, it's everywhere for you. That's awesome. Yeah.
Except
for at home. Still working on that one.
That's right. We'll see if I get there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Kurt, for sharing that.
Thank you.
And okay, let's move on. If you are not in our community, we invite you to join us. BuiltOnAir.com/join gets you in for free, gets you access to our Slack community with thousands of other Airtable users, and also subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to our BuiltOnAir YouTube channel, and all of the other social platforms. We'd love to meet with you and hear what you've got going on. And there's lots of other people that are fans as well, just like Kurt, who Airtable runs in our veins, and we talk about it all day in the BuiltOnAir community. So check us out. With that, finally, same table backlinks. I think this has been like a top request since as long as I've been around in Airtable.
Speaking of as long as you specifically have been around, here's a post from Dan from at least 5 years ago.
All right.
A script that does this. So this is what we've had to resort to. And you kids in your modern Airtable, back in my day.
We had to write automations. And even before this, I think I had a Zapier Zap before like you could write scripts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Kavan has a product specifically built around maintaining them on an automated basis. But like you said earlier, this is not something that they announced. It's just something that someone discovered, and I will kind of go over what's changed. So Airtable is a relational database under the hood, and the benefit of having relational databases is depending on the type of relationship you have, if it's one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many, you'd be able to see specific information about whatever the other object is you're linking to. So prior to recently, if you were to link two tables together, like an employee can belong to a department as represented by this field here, I could go into the departments table and see all of the people who are linked to this department from this direction, and Airtable would manage these two fields simultaneously. So it didn't matter which table you made the association in. If I unlink Lorraine from here and then I scroll down to find where they are,
that's weird.
Am I crazy?
No, it still says saving. It still says saving.
Okay, thank you. I was like, well. So Airtable's not broken. It's just, I think, slower where I am. There it goes. So if you edit it from there, it edits here as well. And if I do it the other direction, it would also edit. And it's very useful. However, for the longest time, somewhere around, 8 years or so, if you linked a table to itself, Airtable didn't two linked record fields, it would just create the one. So same sort of situation. I have a list of employees and I want to see who their manager is. I can create a field that links them together. But if I wanted to see all of Tawana's reportees, I would have to do a bunch of interesting solutions in order to see the relationship in the other direction. Airtable has now made that so that's no longer the case. So if I were to create a new linked record field and I link it to this same table and I'm going to call this manager, Airtable by default is going to create two fields. The naming convention is different from the normal implementation, where if you link two tables together, it will name the field that it automatically creates for you the same name as the table. This, it gives you the same name as the field you just created, prefixed with the words from field. And my conspiracy theory is they took this long to add this feature because they were trying to decide what to name this field. But nevertheless, I can start linking people together. And when I do that, this updates automatically and I can remove from the other field, just like when I did from the departments table. So once you have these two in here, they work as you would expect linked record fields to work. Both of them can have lookup fields and roll-ups and whatnot. Both of them can have counts. They really behave in no way that should surprise you. What I did want to talk about a little bit is what happens if you already have a field in here that is a linked record field linking to the same table. What you can't do if you duplicate this, that's not going to help you. because now you have the same field, and there's no opposing field or inverse field, I think is what it's called under the hood. No inverse field is created when you duplicate. So if I get rid of this, the only way I figured out how to do this is if I take this and I convert it to single line text so I don't lose any data. And then if I take this and turn it back into a linked record field and skip, this goes back to how it was. And then it creates the opposing or the inverse field on the other side. And you can see it's already filled in. So if I kind of scroll, I think my example earlier was Tawana. Yeah, if I look at Tawana's record, I could see all of the people that are reporting to them. My guess as to why this is if there's probably some new property, or it might be the same property for the configuration settings for these fields that are hidden. It's called inverse field ID, whatever the opposite field ID. That's going to be blank for fields that were created prior to this change, and duplicating it is going to carry over that blank value, I think is why duplicating is not going to help you. But converting it to something else and then converting it back is going to sort of reset the settings, if you will. So now, if you do it this way, there are pros and cons, I would say. If you had any filters that were in a view and looking at the way that this table is set up, it would immediately break those filters and remove them from that view. So just be cautious about doing that. There are other instances where whatever implementation you have would break and then fix itself. Like there are certain places, I believe, within automations, if you had like a conditional step within an automation that's looking for a particular value of this field, it would break and then fix itself after you do that convert and then convert back option. And then I believe that's also the case for interfaces. But with views, view filters immediately resolve themselves upon error, whereas the other filter-like places within Airtable's UI do not fix themselves. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I was curious. I played with it. There's one use case where you actually don't really care about the reciprocal, as if you link to yourself. So there are times where you actually want to link to the same record. So I was like, oh, I did it, and it created the backlink, and I was like, I don't want the backlink, and I tried to delete it, but then that resets your original to a text field, so you actually can't go back.
So if you do that, this is now just text. So it's kind of, it's an all or nothing. So what Airtable has said is for any brand new linked record field, it's going to behave the same as all linked record fields.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And something that you could do, if I do edit and I change this back into a link and do this, I have my two linked record fields. I'll bring this over here. Something you could do is do edit field permissions and just say, nobody touch this. Just use this one, and then you can name this like utility field or something like that to communicate to the other people in your base. Don't bother with this or ignore it if it's something that you don't need for your use case. And if it's one of the implementations, like you mentioned, Dan, where you're linking one record to itself, could be confusing. Why would you have two fields that have the same value? It seems redundant. Ignore it.
Yeah. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
I have a question, which is around the org chart extension that requires you to use a self-linking linked record field.
Yep.
And it used to have a setting that's like, do you want to use parent or children or parent? Does this matter now because, or like, does this change? Because now we have the other field. Do you need to switch the field that it's looking at for this to be accurate?
So I can flip back and forth and end up with the same.
Right.
So you have more freedom, I guess, if you want to consolidate. Depending on what plan you're on, you can see the dependencies of all of your fields. And if you don't want to split dependencies amongst these two fields, you can like choose to say, I only want to have things linked from the children field, if you will, or I only want to have it from the parent field, just so you can more easily see dependencies. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to matter.
Cool. Love
that
it.
Makes sense.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, this is got to be on everybody's top 3 wish list items they finally crossed off. I know Scott Rose keeps like a running list of features.
Everything.
Slowly but surely, they're crossing them off.
I'm so excited for this.
This is one of the ones where, for the longest time, I couldn't think of why Airtable wouldn't put this in. And the reason I came up with was, what do you call this field?
Right.
To make it clear that it's the child, and because otherwise you're updating the wrong one. Yeah.
Yes. So I think adding this makes a lot of workflows a lot simpler. And I'm glad to see it. It is baffling that it's not on the What's New page, and it wasn't announced on the community either. I have yet to figure out a rhyme, reason, or pattern as to which features that they announce and which ones they don't.
Yeah. Melanie, we might get Melanie back from Coda. This was one of the reasons why we went to Coda for the backlinks.
Mm-hmm.
Justin says, these aren't the links you're looking for.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, let us know how you're going to be using this new feature. I think that one, I wish there was like in the configuration of an existing one. To be able to like create backlink.
Yes.
Maybe they'll add that because were you saying that if you switch it to a text field and then switch it back, if you had like lookup fields, it will self-heal or no?
Well, let's test that. So the easy way to test this is to get a template, which were all created prior to this feature existing. So we're gonna sit and wait. So now we're kind of reset back to before I did anything. So this linked record field with no inverse. I'm going to add a lookup of email because that seems to be filled out for everything. And then now, same thing I did before, convert to text, which should break my email field. And then if I do link again, same table, it should link itself back together and fix this field. And then I have the inverse field created. Now, when you do this, converting it to text and then back, just be aware that if you happen to have 2 people with the name Faith Butterworth, Airtable is going to pick one of those 2 people, and it might not link to whoever you originally had linked. So one way to make sure that you're absolutely certain and doing Control-Z doesn't delete the inverse field, which could be nice, could not be, depending on what your preference is. One thing I would recommend doing, formula record ID, I would do get a record ID for every single record. I'll put that over here. And then what I would do is I would get myself a lookup of the record ID. So here, reporting to is basically your manager. So here are all of my manager's record IDs. What I would do to make sure that that's preserved is, well, you have two options, right? If the purpose is to convert a field into a linked record such that it has the inverse, you could either convert this directly into a linked record field, and I'll show how to do that. Do this. So it will give me the same values, but know exactly which person to link to, even if there's two people with the same name. No record is going to have duplicates of the same record ID. And then I have my inverse field created at the end. Or you can do, let's say you have a bunch of dependencies already on this field and you don't want to end up with duplicates. What you could do is convert this to single line text first so that this value is sort of stamped in place. And then you would change this one into single line text. What I would do is I would copy and paste all of the values over. And then I would convert this back into a linked record. So all of the values were going to end up being the same in this field. I no longer need this. This field is created automatically and they're linking. And I know for a fact that all of these, when I converted from text back into a linked record, it links to the correct person because I was pulling directly from the record ID. So I was specific about which Tawana, which Hazel, which Faith.
Yeah, that's a great strategy there.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Thank you for demoing that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And now you have same table backlinks.
Excited.
And, yep. That concludes our episode and also our season 22. Thank you for being with us. We'll be off for some time and join us again in the future. We will have more episodes to come. So thank you all. Have a great week and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OntoAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.